about the vineyard. What she cares about is that her husband is the king, and to thwart the king's power is unacceptable. So she manipulates, and she gets Naboth killed by lies. She gets the vineyard turned over to her royal husband. She breaks the law, she breaks faith, she breaks covenant with the God of Israel, and if you read later in the story, she will pay the price for it, because she does get killed by dogs who lick her blood off the pavement. The deal here is, excuse me, but Ahab is the king. If he hadn't been pouting or sick or whatever was happening, he would have been aware of this unbelievable scheme that his wife set in motion. If he had been paying attention as he was required to be, he would have seen the horrific injustice that Jezebel set into motion. Friends, our actions and our inactions have consequences. We must be alert. We must see. We must pay attention. We must carry with us the eyes of Christ and acknowledge our own complicity in wrongdoing because of decisions or choices. Like, for instance, clearly the catastrophe in the Gulf of Mexico is directly attributable to BP's drilling. But BP wouldn't have that profiteering drive if all of us didn't simply assume there'd be gas at the nearest gas station at affordable prices whenever we want. We are complicit. Life is interrelated, and it's complicated. But we, as followers of the living God, we are required to see the complicated connections. And keeping God at the center, we have to seek out ways to live in harmony with compassion and justice, because we share a small planet, the world that God loved so much. Well, the gospel story is a familiar gem. Pharisee Simon determines that if this man Jesus were a prophet, and he's not, he would have known what kind of woman this is, and he doesn't. Therefore, Jesus can't be a prophet. What Simon sees in the woman and her interaction with Jesus determines how Simon understands Jesus. And Simon, unfortunately, is very clear about what he sees: a sinner, and Jesus, not a prophet. Isn't it clear that Simon's inability to see differently, his lack of sight, if you will, his expecting to see what he expected to see and then not being able to see bigger than that, carrying his own prejudices and preconceived notions into the encounter, blocked him from seeing what was really going on. This is another important teaching for us. Much as the reading from Kings is a challenge to our bringing attention to all that's going on around us, so the requirement that we see with the eyes of Jesus asks a great deal of us. All the old stereotypes we carry around: urban, rural, men, women, gay, straight, people of color, white, old, young, Democrat, Republican, all of them, all of the stereotypes. Jesus says no, no, 1,000 times no. They cannot be the way you see one another. They have to go. We have to meet each person with generous spirits and gospel hospitality. Every person. Verse 47 in the reading from the the Gospel of Jesus according to Luke. It's the nub of the story. I tell you, Jesus said to Simon, her sins, which were many, have been forgiven. This is why she is showing great love. It's clear that the woman is not forgiven because of what she does to Jesus, weeping and washing his feet and pouring the alabaster jar of ointment. The loving actions, the weeping and the washing his feet, those loving actions follow from this sense of being freed, from being forgiven. And that, of course, is what the little parable about the debts and debtors means. You know, Carl Menninger, that famous psychiatrist, once said that if he could convince patients in psychiatric hospitals that their sins were forgiven, 75% of those folks could walk out the next day into full lives. Forgiveness means relinquishing, letting go. It's that simple. Because to relinquish something is to release whatever power it holds over us. If I forgive someone for a wrong done to me, I no longer allow them to determine, or that event to determine, how I treat with this person. Are there not deep cisterns in us filled with guilt that Jesus would turn into wine and free us to party into holy life? And when we do that, when we let go, wouldn't we be just like this woman, filled with joy and thanksgiving and gratitude and crying in thanksgiving and new life? So I want to end with a poem that I think captures this whole sense of pay attention, see with the eyes of Christ, watch. This was my dad's most favorite poem. I remember being like 8 years old at our summer church camp when someone used this during a worship service and my dad weeping at it. We used it at his funeral, and you probably know it. It was battered and scarred, and the auctioneer thought it scarcely worth his while to waste his time on the old violin. But he held it up with a smile. "What am I bid? Good people," he cried. "Who'll start the bidding for me? $1? $1? Do I hear two? $2. Who makes it $3? $3 once, $3 twice, going for $3. But no, from the room far back, a gray-bearded man came forward and picked up the bow. Then wiping the dust from the old violin and tightening up the strings, he played a melody pure and sweet as the angels sing. The music ceased, and the auctioneer, with a voice that was quiet and low, said, "What now am I bid for this old violin?" as he held it aloft with the bow. 1,000? 1,000? Do I hear two? 2,000? Who makes it $3? 3,000 once, 3,000 twice. Gone, gone, said he. The audience cheered, but some of them cried, "Well, we just don't understand. What changed its worth?" Swift came the reply, the touch of a master's hand. And many a man with life out of tune and battered and scarred with sin is auctioned cheap to a thoughtless crowd, much like that old violin. A mess of pottage, a glass of wine, a game, and he travels on. He's going once, he's going twice, and then he's almost gone. But the master comes, and the foolish crowd never quite can understand the worth of the soul, the change that is wrought by the touch of a master's hand. So may we carry not only the sight, but the hands of our master. And so I wanted us to respond. We